This review was made possible by contributions from viewers like you.
Let me see if I got this straight. Circumstances beyond my control force me to delay my reviews, and because of that, time itself has locked me away in some kind of a temporal pocket where physics and reality are screwing with me?
Yeah, pretty much.
That doesn't make any sense.
Hey, don't get angry at me. I'm only telling you what I was told. Besides, you're talking to your hand right now. Does that make sense?
Okay, I guess you got a point. Well, regardless of my situation, the show must go on. And since time is pretty much meaningless, let's take a giant step back in time and take a look at Walt Disney's Alice Comedies. Stop that. Before Walt Disney found his stride with characters like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, he was already pushing the envelope with what animation could do. One of his earliest experiments involved the combination of live action and animation, which resulted in the Alice Comedies. There are dozens of Alice shorts that Disney made between 1923 and 1927, but we're only going to sample a few of them, starting with Alice's Wonderland. We open on Alice, played by Virginia Davis, paying a visit to Walt Disney himself. See, she had to knock extra loud for him to hear her. Because it's a silent film. Forget it, let's move on. Alice declares that she would like to see some funnies, which Disney is all too happy to do. You might expect Walt to show a more technical explanation of how animation is accomplished, like you'd see him do in so many TV specials in the not-too-distant future, but right now, he's all about maintaining the illusion that these drawings just come to life on their own. That's probably the best way to take this, considering that Disney and his crew had yet to develop the 12 principles of animation, so the animation itself isn't all that stellar. It's also worth noting that this cat looks awfully bored. What kind of bizarre crap did he have to see so that a cartoon mouse poking him with a sword is this boring? Alice goes home and has a dream about being in the cartoon world herself. Welcome to our city, Alice!
Wow, reading word balloons is much more convenient than reality pausing so I can read a title card.
Seriously, I always wondered what was happening when someone in a silent film was waiting for their dialogue to be read. So Alice is having a gay old time with her dream friends.
Now I'll do a dance.
Thrill as she doesn't dance with any animated characters. Even in this early stage in animation history, we see cartoons not making a lick of sense, like lion cages being made out of beef jerky. Alice runs away from the lions, instead of making friends with them, then she goes down in a rabbit hole, which takes her to a Wonderland within the Wonderland? But the lions chase Alice out of the rabbit hole and off a cliff where the movie abruptly ends. Walt Disney, killing small children in their dreams since 1923. The next short on this list, which also happens to be the very next Alice comedy ever made, is Alice's Day at Sea. So, Alice dreams of falling off of a cliff in the last short, then this short opens up with a dog waking up from a dream? Did the dog dream that Alice went to visit Walt Disney's cartoon studio? Sheesh, I think I used my Inception joke prematurely. And it turns out that the dog is Alice's chauffeur. Anyone else more interested in seeing a series of shorts featuring him? He seems like a much more interesting protagonist. Alice meets a sailor down on his luck, and he begins to tell her his story in a cartoon that's drawn with white on black instead of black on white. Apparently the sailor was J. Stewart Blackton. Don't feel bad about not knowing the name of the very first animator. I had to look him up too. Then Alice falls asleep in a conveniently placed boat.
Man, I wish that I was a sailor. That would be so cool. So cool.
It's so cool that she dreams about being a sailor, and her boat immediately sinks to the bottom of the ocean. You know, it's crude animation like this dancing fish sequence that really makes you appreciate the drudgery that Disney's team went through to figure out how animated characters are supposed to move. When critics thought that Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs wasn't going to work, it's because they were imagining an hour and a half of this. Hey, look at that! Disney created the Fish Police. Uh-oh. Little girl. Animated tentacles. Don't do it, Disney! Don't do it! But do go ahead and saw one of your fellow sea creatures in half. That's not disturbing at all. After a bit of hijinks, Alice, her car that she has for some reason, and her swordfish get eaten by this bigger fish, and... something happens inside the fish that makes the swordfish and the car walk out with multiple injuries, but Alice is completely fine. Did they all have a fight inside of that fish, and Alice kicked both of their asses? After getting involved in what's probably the world's first tentacle hentai, Alice wakes up inside of a fishing net. Help! My human is incredibly stupid! Ruff, ruff. So the sailor she was talking to before gets her out, and they start yucking it up over how she was shipwrecked too. On to Alice and the Three Bears. We open on the three bears preparing their porridge by digging into the contents of their dog's bowls. Are you bears or are you wild animals? Wait. It would appear that Baby Bear is actually brewing himself some beer. So that's why his porridge was always just right. And look at this list of ingredients going into this beer. Damn, Uncle Walt was hardcore. He chases after a frog to collect some hops. Okay, that's pretty funny. Then we find Alice immediately in Wonderland. At this point, Disney figures we all know the drill, so why bother opening up the short with her falling asleep? Alice and her unnamed cat break into the bears' house for some reason. She isn't lost like Goldilocks was, she just barges in. Then she's taken away by Papa and Mama Bear and is about to be killed by a head saw. Dark. And her cat comes up with Idea 9, which is to call out the reserves. I wonder what ideas 1 through 8 were. So the cat saves Alice and, oh my god! Ladies and gentlemen, the world's first furry porn artist, Walt Disney. Alice's spooky adventure begins with the little rascals losing their baseball in an allegedly haunted house. Alice goes in to get the ball, and she has a few mishaps which look like they should be the setup for her friends to be afraid of her because they think she's a ghost, but that just doesn't happen. Instead, she goes into Spooksville, somehow, and the ghosts need her help. What do they need from her? Take it off! Wow, did I stumble onto the wrong assortment of cartoons for this review? Then they start... dancing? Oh, I get it. It's the 1920s version of Thriller. Their dancing interrupts a ghostly game of mahjong, which causes the ghosts to go nuts and chase after them. After they kill all the ghosts, which seems more morbid than I'm sure it was intended to be, the cat professes his undying love for Alice, which then dissolves to Alice with her legs splayed out. Damn it, Disney, have you no sense of decency?
Hush up.
Then the short ends with Alice being arrested for breaking and entering. Hooray! Now let's move on to Alice Cans the Cannibals. We open on Alice and nameless Disney Cat out for a little drive when they fall right off a cliff and into the ocean. Wait, what? Wait, slow down. Okay, forces that be, can you do me a favor and just pause this cartoon for a couple of seconds? Thank you. How we gonna get to shore? Great. I made that kind of a fuss over something so obvious that it didn't even need to be written on a title card. Since you're granting me favors, I don't suppose maybe you can let me out? Apparently, I just used my one phone call. They eventually make their way to a tropical island inhabited by cannibals wearing blackface. Then they run away while jumping over invisible hurdles. And it's only Alice, the cat, and the Cannibal King who are jumping like that. I don't get it. Alice then defeats them by harpooning them onto a hippo through their nose rings, and they get dragged to their watery deaths. Horribly violent and racially insensitive. Alice chucks a spear into the King Cannibal's ass, and it's the end. You know, these aren't really so much animated shorts as much as they are animated ramblings. Things are being said, but they just don't end up going anywhere. Next up, Alice chops the suey. Oh, this ought to be rich. We begin with Walt Disney's Flying Circus. Due to contractual issues, the Alice in this short is played not by Virginia Davis, but Marcia Gay. Davis would return for one more comedy, but Marcia Gay would actually go on to do twice as many Alice shorts as Davis did. Anyway, the omnipresent animator's hand draws them into Chinatown, except that it isn't. Then Alice gets abducted by a horrible Chinese stereotype. And he's also a rat. Cute. The rat takes Alice into the back door of a Chinese restaurant, which leaves me terribly confused. Shouldn't it be the cat they want to take into the back of a Chinese restaurant? The cat eventually grabs Alice and makes a break for it, then hides among these rocks. In the real world, one would be able to easily discern a burlap sack from a rock, but in this world of black lumps and white lumps, the Chinese rat would, of course, be confused about what is what. They get into a chase scene, which ends with a bunch of Chinese rats getting impaled. Ah, so that's the cat's name. Cat the Impaler! Let's move on. Naturally, the rats are just fine, and Alice and the cat escape their pursuers by hiding in the inkwell. Okay. Time for Alice the Jailbird. I'm sure nothing can go wrong with this short. Alice and the cat steal a pie cooling on the windowsill, with the help of a turtle that I guess was made out of Legos. I mean, how else can you account for the telescopic neck, his limbs being used as detachable paddles, and his head being blown off having no effect? Decapitation ain't no big thing. They get apprehended by the police, and the focus of the cartoon is mostly on the cat trying to break out of prison, when you'd think he would be trying to get Alice out too. Did he just forget about how fiercely loyal he was to her in previous shorts? No, he swoops in to save her at literally the last second, and we cut to the end before we have the chance to learn if she landed safely and got away, or if they were plucked out of the sky by heavy firepower. Let's wrap things up with Alice the Toreador, which opens on Alice and nameless Disney Cat getting word of a bullfighting competition they think they can win, since bringing your own bull is an option. The cat finds a bull that is already as tame as they come.
That's a bum steer! Oh my god, this is the greatest steer I've ever seen in my life!
The bullfight begins, and we're introduced to our villain, Terrible Tom from Toronto. So far, this guy is the first character aside from Alice to actually get a name. Suddenly I can't help but wonder why Terrible Tom didn't get carried over into the regular Disney canon. We all love Peg-Leg Pete for being Mickey Mouse's rival, but why couldn't Terrible Tom have some of that action? Anyway, they switch bulls, and Terrible Tom actually gets his ass pretty well handed to him by Alice's bull. Tom's bull chases Alice around a bit, then he gets into a fight with a cat, and oh my god, the cat ripped his skin clean off! You do not f*** with nameless Disney cat! Alice proceeds to show the bullskin what's what. The crowd realizes that they've been fooled, and then she was lynched. Or at least that's what I assumed happened, since this is another short that stops before any real resolution is reached. The end. So that was only a small sample of Walt Disney's Alice comedies. And despite my snark, I recommend them. While these shorts are riddled with the kinds of problems I would tear into other movies about, it has to be remembered that these were made back when animation was in its infancy. No one had really discovered what it took to animate good performances, and stories were kind of ignored since audiences of the day were more impressed with the idea that drawings could even move in the first place. These shorts are also must-sees for any hardcore Disney fan, if only to gain an even greater appreciation for the man by learning about where he came from as an artist and to where he would eventually go. The Alice comedies are far from perfect movies, and they ultimately have nothing to do with Alice in Wonderland at all, but they're definitely worth a look. As for me, I still gotta figure out how to... What the... Crap. I'm stuck in time, but I've still gotta worry about power failures. Ah, there, that's better.